welcome again to Leaders Uncut. This is Catherine Oakes, your host, and today it is my great pleasure to have with us Stuart McFaul, who is founder and president of Stuart McFaul Associates. Hello, Stuart. How's everything going?
It's going very, very well, Catherine. So nice to see you.
So nice to see you. I'm so glad you're here. You're doing something really interesting with your company. I can't wait to have you talk about this, speak about your background, why you did this, what are you going to do in the next couple of years, and give my listeners some insight as to why you're different and so interesting. I can't wait to hear that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it'll be fun to talk about this.
Good. So give us some background about you and the company and what you specialize in.
So I specialize in a special form of marketing that I call empathy-based marketing. And empathy-based marketing is where you are focused on forging an empathetic relationship with your customer, with your employees, with your partners. And in particular, a very particular type of empathetic relationship that I call productive empathy. And in productive empathy is where you work with people to try to build something together. And this seems to be the direction that not only your partners want to do and that your employees want to do, so they're better engaged. But today with Generation Z actually wants to have relationships with their vendors and providers where they're actually working together to build something.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, that's definitely is important. As you know, marketing is slightly shifting, right? It's influenced by a lot of the technology. People are now having different types of expectations. And I think the human side of everything is standing out because of technology. So it's really in a conundrum, right? That's happening right now.
Yes. Well, I think right now, particularly because of AI, we can immediately leap to the idea that if things are becoming so machine driven that we will actually lose the humanity in the work that we're doing. And I would argue that in the last many years, when we focus so heavily on the practice of digital marketing and mastering the techniques of digital marketing, that we really lost sight that we were actually trying to forge a human relationship with our employees, customers, and partners. And the interesting thing, what AI is allowing us to do, is that it presents tools that allows us to deepen the human relationship that we have with our customers rather than have a fully automated relationship. It's actually allowing us to enhance the humanity that we have in the relationships that we have.
I totally understand that and agree with you, and it's becoming something very critical. So 75% of your clients are in tech, right?
Yes.
And you follow a 7-phase process, correct?
Yes.
So
yes.
Can you speak about that? That would be really interesting to understand.
Yeah. So without getting into all the phases, the most important ones, are the ones that we do in the beginning, and this is where we actually define who we are and what it is that we want to accomplish. I think at the end of the day, when I go back to working with company founders, whether they're in very, very large organizations or startups, they always start with a sense of purpose. They start with a sense of direction of the difference that they want to make in the world. And depending on how they carry that forward, that authentic connection with what they want is the thing that attracts other employers, attracts investors, attracts partners, and ultimately attracts customers in the company. Mm-hmm. What happens, though, is that they lose sight of that authentic nature when they get into the day-to-day of doing business. So it's very much like sailing a ship. So when you're sailing a ship, a lot of people think that, the captain can see everywhere that they're going and they know exactly where land is. And the fact is they don't. They're surrounded by water and they're surrounded by the things that are most immediately in front of them. Mm-hmm. Well, when you face that every single day, it's very easy to lose sight of the destination, of the authentic goal that you had in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the goal is with my approach is to tap into that authenticity and really embed it into the company so that it becomes the bedrock upon which everything is built.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step, is knowing authentically who you are and what it is that you want to achieve so that you can attract others.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is to go and build a productive, empathetic relationship with your customers, which means now that you know yourself, you have to know them. You have to know what they want and find those points of connection so that you can build a bridge and really build something constructively together.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing that, you also find out what your customer, and when I say customer, I mean customer, partners, and employees. Mm-hmm. When you're working with your customer in that way and build that kind of a productive, empathetic relationship, you can actually then find out, well, what is it that they really value? And how can I add value in the relationship that we have? So if you're able to build that understanding and understand on top of that the value that you can bring, you're setting the basis for a very, very successful long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very important for sure. Don't you think also that businesses nowadays have to be very agile? I mean, things are moving so fast. And sometimes you set a certain directions, you have a certain goal, you have a very detailed strategy, you know exactly the tactics that you're going to be implementing. And then something happens, maybe a new technology suddenly comes up and yes. Everybody starts to look at this, and it forces you to evaluate the relevance of that specific technology to eventually insert it into your tactics, right? That's going to happen more and more, don't you think?
Precisely. And this is actually, so these qualities that I talk about, authenticity, empathy, value, and a few other things, integrity, distinction, relevance, intelligence, generosity, consistency. The final one is what you're just talking about right now, which is resilience. Mm. And resilience is the ability to go and have something thrown at you, get a real curve or find a competitor that comes out of nowhere. And instead of, freaking out, looking at it and saying, what's the opportunity that this is giving us? And I've found in every scenario that if you anticipate what some of these curves may be, you can respond very, very well. It makes you very resilient. Mm-hmm. But even if you don't anticipate, if you take a step back and you're thoughtful about what you're doing, very often you'll see the even greater opportunity that's coming to you in this curve that's coming your way.
Oh, very true. And I call this the intelligence of opportunities. It's the intelligence of recognizing something without rejecting it right away, and with the guts and the strength to analyze it, because it's very scary sometimes. And when you see something that potentially is scary, could disturb your operations, very often people have an initial reaction of rejection. But it takes a certain level of awareness, of intelligence to develop a different perspective towards things like that. Would you agree?
Yes.
With that?
I do. And what I often recommend to people is that in every plan that I ever put together, there's always a plan B and sometimes a plan C, because you have to anticipate that in the flow of business, you're going to be given either opportunities or challenges that you don't anticipate. And so at what juncture could these potentially come along? And if you can anticipate what they may be, you can actually plan way ahead. So I'll give you an example. We had a very interesting company that had developed one of the very, very first AIs that was competitive at the time. It was competitive to Siri. It was an app called Evie. And it was out of the UK. And we launched it in the iTunes store, and it became very, very popular because it could do what Siri could not. And what Siri couldn't do was take two independent concepts and come up with a third. Siri was good at answering in a rote fashion, but not really being able to think and put these concepts together. So this technology, which was called Evie, became very, very popular in the iTunes store because we called it, and we were very cheeky when we launched it. We called Evie Siri's smarter sister, and which was a little bit tweaking, Apple's nose in doing that. But we came to the top of the iTunes store, and we had suspected by taking this very bold approach in what we were doing that Apple might not like it. Well, in truth, Apple didn't like it. And they told us about 4 weeks in, they said, we're going to take you out of the iTunes store because you're competitive with what it is that Apple does. And we have rules against doing that. Well, here's the secret. This was the plan B. We anticipated that could happen. And by anticipating that it could happen, we said, okay, if we know that that's going to happen, what are the other circumstances where Apple has gone in and has taken out apps that were very, very successful because Apple considered them to be competitive to them? And what we did is that we went straight to social media. And we said, here's an example of Apple acting in restraint of trade. And what it's doing is that it is taking some of the best performing technologies out there and taking it out because they consider it competitive. Well, there was such an uproar in social media over that, and it was just a 2-day period, that Apple on Monday, they had told them on Friday they were taking them out. On Monday, Apple said, okay, you can stay.
Wow.
Well, the social media furor actually bumped them to the top of the iTunes store again for another month. But our long-term strategy was to keep the presence enough in the public eye so that the companies that we wanted to acquire the technology could get sight and say, okay, maybe we want to buy this. And one of those companies actually took a look at what was going on and they said, okay, we want to own this technology. We want to own this artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence became the core intelligence in Amazon's Alexa.
Oh my God, wow. That's quite a story. Wow, very successful.
It was fun. It was fun, but it was being able to have that plan B.
Well, and don't overreact too quickly, because I'm sure most companies would receive this type of threat, because it is a threat from a major corporation like Apple, maybe very differently if you're not prepared. I can understand that would be the case. Yeah.
That was it. And but we by anticipating it and putting the right things in place, we were able to respond, I think, in a very, very effective fashion.
That's wonderful. That's a great success story. So, I mean, Stuart, you've done a lot of things. You also wrote a book, right? It's called The 10 Superpowers of the World's Most Successful Brands, right? So
yes.
I'm sure there must be some interesting stories there. When did you launch the book and where people can find the book?
Well, it's so funny. So I launched the book as a self-written book because I wanted to, or self-published book, I should say. Mm-hmm. And I did it with the idea that I kind of wanted to go and test some things. And what's been really great about it is that I gave it a very, very limited distribution. And it gave me enough feedback to go and readdress some of those things. So I'm actually in the process. I still have the book and it's still available to anybody who might want to read it, but I'm in the process of reworking it because I think that there is a lot of stuff that I've learned from the feedback that people have brought me that makes it even better.
Oh, so it's a new release then that you will publish in 2025.
In 2025, exactly.
Wonderful. That's great. So I'm sure you've gone through a lot of challenges, successes. What would you say was one of the biggest challenges you had to go through during your life? How did you overcome it? And what was the big lesson that you learned?
I think, and this becomes very personal, I think the biggest challenge I had in my life was really accepting myself. And, I was a young college kid. I was gay, but not out of the closet, very, very afraid. And I finally learned to embrace that aspect of my personality and use that as a way to be very transparent, very authentic with people. And was successful for me. But it was successful to a point. And so one day I met someone and we decided that we were going to go home together. And instead, he took me in his truck, took me out of town, beat me up, and threw me out of the car on the side of the road and left me to walk home.
Oh my God.
So here I am, a 19-year-old kid, and thinking that, hey, I'm finally being okay with myself. And instead, I had this really negative experience.
Wow.
And it could have been really awful. But the fact is, when I walked back that 20 miles that night, when I got back to the dorms, the people were so warm and welcoming and helpful and supportive that I said, okay, that's the person that I want to be. I want to be like how I was received. So how can I go and lionize people in the same way that these people came and uplifted me? And that was the thing that gave me my mandate that said, okay, well, if I want to do that, what's the best way for me to do it? And the way for me was to do marketing, which is what I do. I believe that that's what my responsibility is as a marketer, is to take people who have wonderful ideas, help them make it the best that it can be, and then uplift them so that they can go and help others. But what it's taught me is this, and I've had many conversations with people like this. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to someone can often be the fuel to make them who they're meant to be, or the purpose that they have.
I so agree with you. I was just going to tell you that sometimes you have to go through terrible experiences, and sometimes it's just one experience, just like you, to make you, first of all, understand certain things, build a certain level of resilience, and pinpoint what it is truly deep inside your soul that is very often awakened during those moments, right?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. I was talking to, and you think, well, how does this apply to working with technology companies?
Yeah.
So I was talking to a president of an AI company that was focused on the manufacturing industry. And I said, well, what got you to do this? Why did you want to start this company? And it was always, well, because, AI is the future and it's really going to help, marketing automation and machine automation. And, it'll uplift manufacturing into great ways. But I kept pushing him. I'm going, well, let's get to the root of this. What is it that really drove you here? And I had to ask him that question about 6 times. And this was a company that had a hard time connecting with their audience. They couldn't find a way to do it. And finally he said, well, the reason I do this is that when I was a boy, I was in a town where automation came to our little manufacturing town, and it took away all the jobs. And I realized through the work that I'm doing with artificial intelligence in manufacturing that I can actually bring those jobs back to my community. So he was able to see in what he did that he could actually make his experience better. Well, we took that and we used that as the lead card for the business relationships that they were developing with manufacturers. And I have to tell you, because of that authentic connection that he had to the solution that he was providing, the doors just flew open for them.
That's great.
The manufacturing companies wanted to meet with them. The AI companies wanted to connect with him. It just created so many opportunities. But it was by touching that thing that was so sensitive to him that even he was afraid to touch it.
Yeah.
But by opening it up, he got what he wanted.
And you're right, and you have to have the right partners, because I see that all the time. People are used to experiencing a certain level of success. They have their own habits. They have no threats around them. It's been like this for decades, very often. So suddenly somebody knocks on their door and tells them, hey, what you're doing, what you've been doing all this time, sorry, it's not going to work anymore. I mean, the first reaction is, are you crazy? No, right? That's the first reaction. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. This is not happening. Just like when the internet launched. Who needs this? Yes. Or when PC launched. Who needs a PC? Right? The reaction is always the same thing, because inherently human beings do not like change. So we resist change as long as we possibly can. But what happens, and this is where the danger lies, in the meantime, maybe, or it's very possible, your competitors will start embracing that sooner than you do. And then what happens? I say this all the time. You may wake up too late, and it's too late to react. It's right. It happens all the time.
It does. And particularly, in the technology world. And I kind of got this insight many, many years later, years ago. Because I'm old enough to remember this. I remember when banks first installed automated tellers. And when that happened, I remember all the people in my neighborhood and how they said, well, I'm never going to go to a bank and use an automated teller. I don't want to do that with a machine. And because everyone thought, okay, well, the machine's going to take my money and I'm never going to be able to see it again, and it's not going to be logged properly. Yeah. But what happened was, and this is the truth of technology in general, it became convenient. And people suddenly saw the convenience. It was what was going on. And that's always been one of my acid tests with technology, in technology being accepted, is it allowing you to do things faster and in a more convenient way than you did before? That's always the gate that allows it to be accepted.
So true. And time is of the essence. We are running after time all the time. It feels like days are going by faster than they used to. Is it a feeling, or is that really happening this way? We have to rush for everything, and it's especially in the US. It's not like this everywhere, but this country is a little crazy in that regard, where it's you never work enough, you never work fast enough, you're never productive enough, and my God, this is why I embrace technology. Technology is saving so much time for me.
Yes.
And the more I discover it, the more I realize, oh my God, I can do it this way, I can do it that way, and I have never felt threatened by it, not one single second of it, because I know it's inevitable. First of all, that's the principle I have embraced and understood right from the get-go. It is inevitable. If you think you're going to avoid it, you are dreaming here. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. So it's either you resist it as much as you can, which is going to last for a small period of time and then it's going to break, or you decide to be educated. And I think this is key here, it's education. Yeah. It's really hard nowadays to get appropriate, well thought of, well organized education on technology.
It is. And what's interesting, though, I mean, and now I'm going to look at AI, is that you can use AI to educate you about AI. So you can ask it to guide you. Like, how did you come to that decision? Why is this the best prompt for me to use? Things like that. It can guide you to do that. And at the end of the day, and this is why I'm thrilled about artificial intelligence, is that it gives us the opportunity to do what we were told our entire lives that we should do, which is to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And, and that's an incredible gift. I'll give you another example.
Mm-hmm.
I had a last minute request from a client for an urgent need that they had. They had to find a very specific kind of research related to employers in California and how they were, what industries were most afflicted with workers' comp issues, and what were the nature of the accidents that affected their workers' comp issues. It was a big ask, and they had to find very, very quickly. Well, I was able to actually go into a good AI, which is Perplexity. I was able to go into Perplexity, and I was able to ask a series of questions that literally answered all their questions and built the report for them in 20 minutes.
Wow. Amazing.
And when so I thought, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
And so then I showed it to a friend of mine who is one of the nation's top business researchers. And I said, if you were to do this without AI, how long do you think it would have taken, and what might it have cost? And she said, it probably would have been cost about $20,000 to $30,000 in research, and it would have taken probably about 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
it was free, and it was in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, is that we're in this stage where we're able to accomplish so much in so little time, that we're being given the gift that in this world where we're feeling overwhelmed with everything, we're being given back the gift of time for ourselves, for our family, for the things that we actually really would love to do.
That is true, but I think we are still in the in-between right now, where people have a sense that is the case, but they are not fully embracing it and feeling and living it fully yet.
Yes.
And this is why it's so difficult, because it's an interim time that creates, and I see it everywhere. I don't know if you see it, I'm sure you do, Stuart, but people have a high level of anxiety right now, created by a lot of things, the world situation, there are wars everywhere, the economy has been up and down, there's not a lot of security there either, we don't know what's going to happen, and AI and technology is coming in, and everybody's telling us, oh my God, you have to embrace it, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to change. So I mean, this is a recipe for total craziness when you think of it. It's really hard to stay calm, poised, to analyze the situation in a wise manner. It's very, very hard to be wise right now, don't you think? I mean, I see it everywhere.
It is. It's hard. It's hard to be that way, and I think part of it is that because of the nature of the world, it's hard for people to trust. People, don't feel that information can be reliable, sources can be reliable, so on and so forth. And so, I'm working with some different people that are working to try to overcome issues like misinformation, disinformation, things like that, because we realize how important that is. It's going to become more and more important as we move through the next couple of years, because we're going to hit some junctures where we're going to look at things and we will not know immediately, hey, is this real or is this not real?
Yes, and look at the amount of scams that we're getting to. And I mean, really, I have a tendency now to not even want to answer my phone anymore, and it's terrible. Because most people are saying, I don't want to answer that. I'm sure it's scam. And then I'm missing maybe an important call. And it's happened to me. And all the emails that you're getting. So to me, I see a huge shift in marketing. To me, marketing, as we know, is dead.
Yeah, I
really
agree.
believe it's completely dead. I think we have to reinvent it. I think we even have to give it a new name, because as soon as you say that you're a marketer, people want to just run away from you. Right?
No, it's true. Or they think that you're involved in some kind of con game. I
Yes,
mean, that's
that's yes.
and I get it. I get it. It makes sense. But this goes back to this genuine relationship built on authenticity that foments trust. And that's really what you want to do at the end of the day. Understand who you are, understand who your customer is, understand what it is that you can build together so that you can deliver what is needed to build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's simplest formula.
It is, but I'm sure everybody understands that. But you have to get to that level of communication where you can actually have a chance to talk about this. And this is why the initial contact, the first contact, is so critical. And that's where I really believe we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to find a new word. We have to present it differently. Because until we do, we're going to face that same challenge where I don't want marketing. I don't trust you. I'll never trust you. My team can do it. My COO can do it. It's creative. My tech guy can design anything I need. I mean, this is happening. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's asking yourself in every communication that you're doing, am I talking with this person or am I talking at this person?
Yeah, you're right.
And there's still a lot of people talking at other people than talking with them right now.
Yeah.
But I feel encouraged because I take a look, for example, at Gen Z, and Gen Z is just basically saying, I don't want any part of that. I want a genuine relationship. I want no false images as to who you are. So all these things that happened on social media over the course of the last 10 years, where you had people essentially presenting false views of what their lives were, is history. Nobody wants that anymore.
Yes,
which is great.
Well, it's great, but then again, it's a transition, right? It's a transition to something that I knew was going to happen. It's going to be a lot healthier, but there's going to be a time lapse where people will have to adjust, and ad agencies, marketing agencies, they have to adjust. They really have to reinvent the game here.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's going to be engaging with, talking with, working with, and realize that it's in every situation, it is a group project that you're doing between yourself as the company, your customer, your employees, and your partners.
I agree with you.
It's an alliance.
It is an alliance. And the one thing I've noticed works very well, has been working very well lately, is taking the time to know people. Just like I'm taking the time to know you. I'm not charging you anything. I'm taking the time to know every guest that I'm interviewing because I want to know who they are. And it's when you have that type of approach and attitude, people come to you. And then they know you. And the more you speak with them, the more they trust you. And there is the beginning of a relationship, potentially.
Yes.
But that has to take place. I think it's critical that it does.
Yeah, I think and what's great about it is, I feel, is the surprise that you see in someone else's face when they realize, wow, you really are listening to me. Yeah. You really are engaging with me. And how the nature of that conversation goes from being very, very superficial to being able to dive very, very deep.
Yeah.
And that's part that I think is really exciting.
And that's exactly what it is. It's a different approach. It's forcing us to build real human relationships again. And that is happening at the right time, because everything always happens at the right time. Everything is controlled by something above, right? we think we control we control nothing in life, absolutely zero. We just have to have faith and strength and resilience and believe in whatever we want to believe in and go for it. But it's really important because COVID happened, 2020 happened, we were forced to be isolated. There was a reason for that. Now everything is changing, AI is coming in, now we are forced to come together again. And why do we want to do it so much? Because we suffered from isolation so much. So we need that connection, we starve for that connection, and it's happening again.
Yes, and that's where the authenticity part comes in, because I'm finding that the people that, you hear, particularly around the holidays, you hear people saying, I have to get together with this part of my family, and I know that we don't agree on these particular points. And what I found is the most productive way that you can go about doing things is to go in and call it for what it is. Say, there are going to be some things that we don't agree on, but we have all these other things in common and these understandings that we have. So let's take those things that we don't agree on, let's put them on the side. Let's focus on those things that we do agree on, and let's build our relationship on those agreements that we have.
I love that. Love that. It's so beautiful because you have to come from a place of love. And I really believe very often when people react negatively, they are just expressing their pain. They often don't realize that they are doing that. But it's like when someone gets angry at their dog and beats their dogs. Yeah. It's not that their dog is acting bad most of the time. It's that for them it's an outlet, which is a terrible thing to do. It's horrible, but they do it. So first it's to recognize, hey, I'm starting to get angry here. Let's shift my perspective and then look at the situation from a place of love. And when you take the time to do that, then things change, and you don't have to get into an argument. You don't have to get your blood pressure to the roof. It's even healthier.
Well, it's funny how it turns out, because I'll give you another example. A few years ago, I went to a conference, and the person who headed up the conference said, there's going to be somebody here who you guys are going to be like oil and water. You will not get along. You will not be able to mix. And I said, okay, well, good. He goes, I'm just giving you a heads up, just so you're prepared. And I said, okay, well, let me handle. I'll handle it. And I went there, and I met this person. And the way I introduced myself was that I went up to him and I said, you and I are not supposed to get along. And I think you've heard the same thing. And he started laughing. He goes, yeah, I've heard that. And I said, great. Well, I think we know the things that we won't agree on. Let's go off in another room. Let's sit down. We'll talk for an hour. And let's find the points where we do agree. Well, here we are 3 years later, and we're really good friends.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's funny. It's funny when you take the things that are the crazy things, and you just say, let's take it, let's put it in a box so that it doesn't make us both crazy, and let's focus on those things that are of value.
Yeah, and that's also another great example. Don't listen to what others say. They don't know. They don't know. Yeah. I mean, they assume, this is just an assumption that you're not going to get along. I mean, wow. This is another thing I've learned with life is I listen to what others says, but I don't actually. I mean, I hear it, but I don't let them influence my decision, because my decision should come from within. And you have to, nobody knows. How can they know? Have they done a deep inspection of your psyche and everything else?
Well, exactly. Well, and the funniest thing I find is that in these situations, when you start focusing on those commonalities, you discover that those commonalities are even deeper than you might even imagine. Yeah. And so, it makes me sad to think that if I had taken this relationship in the superficial way and said, nope, we won't agree on anything, we can't be in the same room together, I would have missed out on a really wonderful relationship.
You're right. You would. So this is so interesting. So there's one thing I'd like to touch on, Stuart, because I think it's still a strength that most companies like yours have still. and that is creativity, because
Thank you.
AI, tech, it's all great, but it's all based on a lot of things that are not always creative. But people that are creative, that come up with ideas, it's so valuable. And I think it's going to become more and more valuable, because if we can use that creativity and bring it to life using tech, then it's a win-win solution, right?
It is. It is. And to me, creativity, and it's really funny how people define creativity. To me, creativity can be that, create that out of the box approach to a situation. And yeah, it's wonderful to have that. But what's wonderful about creativity is to go in the conversations that you're having, and to be able to seize on the opportunities that you see in the conversation to be able to make the relationship better. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's real creativity. Mm-hmm. It's seeing that, wow, I did not expect that hook to come my way, but that's a really good one that we can build something together on. Yeah. So I think there are many dimensions to creativity, but I think it's willing to look at things from a different standpoint other than your own. I think that's the key one. And willing to look at things as they come. So, and defining them in the moment rather than defining them using principles or ideas that you've had in your head for a long time. It's being open.
It is, but I also believe in order to be creative, you have to be at peace. You have to feel good, because you cannot create if you don't feel good. It's inspiration. You have to be in spirit. That's what inspiration is. You have to be in spirit, and those ideas come when you are in spirit. There was a company in Reno, an ad agency that had been here for a long time, and they don't exist anymore, but I love their domain name. It was called Ideas That Mean Business. And I loved it because it's all about ideas, and many people don't have those ideas. Not everybody is able to come up with genius ideas, something different that's going to make a company stand out. And there's a great example, and then I'm going to let you talk, but there's a great example. It was the agency that got the deal for Geico. Do you know the story of Geico? It was a small agency, actually. Geico, they were looking for an ad agency and ideas. And it was a small agency. No, was it Geico or was it Aflac? Not Geico, Aflac.
Aflac.
Aflac. Okay. So the agency knew that they had to come up with a genius idea for Aflac. It was a small agency. They were competing with large, big names. And then all the teams went on a meeting. And then after the meeting, they all went in the hall. And the CEO was there. And she suddenly had to say, I have to go get some coffee. And she crosses the hall. And everybody was chatting. And she said to all of them, you guys are just making so much noise. You sound like a bunch of ducks. And then everybody started saying, what did you say? This is how the duck from Aflac came to life, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to recognize that, because it's something that just came out of the blue, but somebody said, what did you say? Right? So
Yes. I have a similar story. I was working with a company that was a tech company that was a network storage company. And their sales were really flat. They were successful. They were a $60 million a year company, but they weren't breaking out. And, and they just felt in the background rather than in the foreground. So we were going through a number of interviews with executives. And in between meetings, there was a junior engineer who was walking us from meeting to meeting. And we were going from one meeting to another. And he said, well, one thing you're probably learning is that if it wasn't for us, the cloud wouldn't work. And I turned around to him and I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, our company is responsible for doing all the back-end financial processing for every major banking institution in the world. Well, no one had said that.
Mm.
Was in none of their literature.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just an incidental comment that a junior staff member was saying on this walk. Well,
Yeah.
it became the pivot for the marketing campaign we put together for them.
Isn't that cool?
And within 8 weeks, the company became the subject of a bidding war between HP and Dell.
Wow.
And this $60 million company got purchased for $2.25 billion.
Oh my God, that's a great story. But things like that happen all the time. But you have, I think also, you notice those things because you have a certain level of curiosity and heightened awareness.
Yes.
You know, the one thing that I've learned, I've seen so often, people are so focused on talking. But there's a reason why we have one mouth and two ears. We have to listen, learn to listen, and not always focus on what you're going to say next. But very few people do that, actually. Really listen to what you have to say instead of wanting to talk because it makes them feel important.
Very few companies do this, and particularly in tech. A lot of times in tech, you have people who have created this idea for a company, and they know exactly how it needs to be executed, and they put their heads down and they work together to do it, and they're about to launch the company and discover that they've never even bothered to ask their customer base, do you want this?
There we go. You're so
all the
right.
time.
It happens all the time. So anyway, I could speak with you forever, Stuart, but for the sake of time, I'm having
this is fun. I love this.
I know, it's great. So if there was one advice that you would give to people that are starting their business or starting their professional life, what would that be?
You know, it's ironic that it's coming on the tail of what we just discussed, because it's related to that, and this is what I would always say. The key to success in marketing is just asking. Go to your customer, go to your employees, go to your partners. What do you want? What is it that you want to achieve? I do this. Given the fact that I'm doing, how is that going to be relevant to you? And if it's not, what might I do to be able to make it more relevant to you so that it would be something that you would want to work with?
Oh my God, I love it. You're right. It's so important. It's just ask. You don't know until you ask. And then you get feedback that changes everything. Stuart, you're wonderful. Oh my God, it's just such a blessing to have this conversation with you. I love you.
I feel the same.
You're great. So if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way is reach me at Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, at Stuart McFaul, STUARTMCFAUL.com.
Perfect. We'll do that. And then they can visit your website. We'll put the domain on the video. This way it's easy for them to look at this. And thank you so much. It was wonderful speaking with you. Really wonderful.
Such a joy. This is really fun.
Yeah. For everyone else, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Stuart. And share this, please, on your network. This is why we're doing this. We're doing this to spread the good, to educate, to make people realize that there's so much they can do with their lives. It's not over. It's just the beginning. It's just the environment is a little bit different, but it's exciting. So look at everything with a positive light, because at the end of the day, you can do anything you want. We are our own worst enemies. We create our own barriers, but we can do anything you want. And if you truly believe this, you will make it. You will achieve your goal, any type of goal. So thank you anyway. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.